Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
We're on page 1472, Surah Rahman. Surah Rahman, the beneficent, the instant source of all mercy and kindness. Allah mentions all favors or signs around us in nature in the surah, in the first few verses or the first section. And then in the later sections, he touches on the Day of Judgment, Jannah, and a lot of Jannah afterwards. So, if you look at the contents of the surah, is especially in the beginning, look at all of the mercies that Allah has given us, and also the most repeated verse in the surah, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, bringing our attention to the benefits or that Allah has bestowed upon us could also be linked to Ar-Rahman, or the mercy of Allah as well. Okay, the first two verses. Allah most gracious, it is He who has taught the Quran. One of Allah's gracious blessings to mankind has been to provide them with guidance for living. The Quran has encompassed all previous revelation received by earlier prophets and messengers. Its teachings, principles, and ideas help mankind to lead a normal and fulfilled life for all time to come. So, one of the greatest blessings or mercy that Allah has bestowed upon us humans is that He has given us guidance, and the guidance of the Quran, without which we would all be misguided or lost and always searching for guidance. But we have the Quran, which He has given us and has taught us as well. Verse 3, He has created man, He has taught him speech and intelligence. Allamahul Bayan in verse 4. Bayan applies to both thought and speech, in as much as it comprises the faculty of making a thing or an idea apparent to the mind and conceptually distinct from other ideas, as well as the power to express this cognition clearly in spoken or written language. We know in Surah Baqarah, when Allah created man, He taught him the names or natures of all things, which is linked to this bayan, that is of conceptual thinking and higher thinking and speech, and be able to study all things around us.
What's that noise?
Can move on to the next verses. Verse 5, the sun and the moon follow causes exactly computed, and the herbs and the trees both alike bow in adoration. And the firmament He has raised high, and He has set up the balance of justice, in order that you may not transgress due balance. So establish weight with justice, and fall not short in the balance. Verse 9, 7, 8, 9, the balance and justice is usually understood to refer to commercial transactions or social interactions, as well as interactions of man with the environment, himself, and with Allah. It affects material as well as emotional and intellectual and spiritual transactions. So usually we'll see this as social, or when we read about justice and all in balance, we think of economic transactions and of the example of Shuaib alayhi salam. But if you look at the context of these verses from verse 4 and the verses afterwards, verse 11, 12, you see it's all about science and nature around us. And the balance could be referring to the balance of the environment in not wasting or misusing the environment around us. I'll read a further note. This order in nature and the cosmic system may suffer disruption and disturbances as a result of human activity, folly, or abuse of the environment. Natural resources may be plundered, the ozone layer could be ruptured, but the overall order and balance, being under the authority and control of the Supreme Creator, shall be preserved and maintained until such time that Allah Almighty wills it to be otherwise. In the meantime, men have the responsibility to establish justice in all the dealings with another at all levels and in all spheres of life. Okay, moving on. Verse 10, it is he who has spread out the earth for his creatures, therein his fruit and date palms producing spades enclosed with dates, also corn with its leaves and stalk for fodder, and sweet-smelling plants. Then which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? Verse 13 is the most common verse in the surah, repeated over 30 times in the surah. The commentators generally take the dual form literally and suppose that the two kinds of rational beings, that is, jinn and men, are meant. But the dual form can be used in Arabic to sometimes give force to the meaning. That the dual is used here for this purpose is shown by the fact that the blessings mentioned are those which serve as means of sustenance for mankind, such as palms and grain, which are not needed for ethereal beings as the jinn are considered to be. Hence, mankind only is addressed. Because this, up until this verse, we haven't come across jinn mentioned yet in the verses, but it follows afterwards. One explanation is that the dual in the Fabi'i ala rabbikuma tukadhiban is referring to men, or different types of men, like it could be believers or disbelievers, strong or weak, or like Shabir Ahmad says, it could be man and woman. While others understand that the dual is referring to men and jinn. I just read Shabir Ahmad's notes on this. Very diverse concepts in the surah are repeatedly punctuated by a verse that has often been mistranslated. The addressee of that verse is you both. So many commentators render it as O jinns and men, whereas keeping in mind the big picture of the Quran, the correct rendition is O man and woman. Another frequent error is translating Allah as blessing, bounty, or favor. As the reader will soon notice, that meaning falls completely and repeatedly out of line, out of the flow of meaning. The other meaning of Allah is Qudra, or authority, power, and control. And that is what goes consistent throughout the verses in the surah. Hence, the correct rendition of the verse will be, then, O man and woman, which authority of your Lord will you deny? Instead of, O jinns and men, which bounty of your Lord will you deny? So I don't think it's such a big thing, but it could, I think either could apply. In some cases, it might be jinn also, as we've seen the later verses where jinn and men are referred together in the verse. Verse 17, okay, we'll read verse 14 and 15 from where we see the jinns first mentioned. Verse 14, he created man from sounding clay like unto pottery, and he created jinns from fire free of smoke. Then which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? He is Lord of the two east and Lord of the two west. Then which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? Verse 17, the Lord of the two east and two west could be understood as being the points of sunset and sunrise during the different seasons. In the summer, we see for us when it rises and sets, it's slightly south, but in the winter seasons, it's more to the north of east and west, where it rises and sets, and throughout the year moves between those points depending on the tilt of the earth. Verse 19. He has set free two bodies of flowing water meeting together. Between them is a barrier which they do not transgress. This verse, we usually, a similar verses to this is mentioned a few times in the Quran, and when we look at it, usually we only think about the scientific facts that it mentions of the two bodies of water not meeting. But I came across explanations looking at this metaphorically as well. The two seas or bodies of water, the salty and sweet or fresh, symbolize the two streams of life, the worldly and the spiritual. They also form a pair. Salt water, though undrinkable, does have a purifying or sterilizing effect and is to be consumed in hell. These two bodies of water meet in our lives in religion, but there remains a barrier between them which prevents one from corrupting the other. It requires special effort to pass from one to the other. Um, Section 2, verse 26, all that is on earth will perish, but will abide forever the face of your Lord, full of majesty, bounty, and honor. This, I think, is referring to on the day of judgment when the first trumpet is blown, where everything will be destroyed and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be remaining. And on the second trumpet, then will everything be resurrected again. Verse 33. O you assembly of jinns and men, if it be you can pass beyond the zones of the heavens and the earth, pass you. Not without authority shall you be able to pass. Mankind and jinn should make an effort to transcend their limitations, to cross over from one stream to another, to reach heaven from earth. But they will not be able to do this unless they obtain authority from Allah. He will not give such authority unless they are worthy. Whether worthiness merely means to obtain adequate knowledge, technology, and skills, or it has perhaps some moral standards as well. It's quite interesting. I think recent in this past week, so was the 50-year anniversary of man landing on the moon or something. So this verse, usually we see it as being referring to man going into space or trying to go to the moon or other planets, whatever it is. And we've seen we have achieved that, but it's not necessarily only meaning that. But if you can take another meaning, is that we should try to transcend our limitations, try to push ourselves to do the best that we can in whatever we can, because we know we are created in the best of the mold. So there is we should push the limits to see how far we are and how much we are able to achieve as well. Another understanding of this verse metaphorically is that you can only continue your evolution beyond the temporal and spatial bounds you now see if you have primed yourself for immortality instead of mere survival. So if I understand the statement correctly, it is that you should prepare yourself for the eternal life, which is once we are dead in this world. So if you only look at it, the material world, then we're not preparing for the afterlife, which is eternal. So one commentator looks at this verse as referring to preparing ourselves for to go beyond the zones of heavens and earth, meaning afterlife. Okay. The next few verses deals with the day of judgment, and then verse 40, 41 till the end of the section mentions hell, and then the next two sections, or the next section starts describing Jannah. I'll just read from verse 46. But for such as fear the time when they will stand before the judgment seat of the Lord, there will be two gardens. Then which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? Containing all kinds of trees and delights, then which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? In them each will be two springs flowing free. Then which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? In them will be fruits of every kind, two and two. And the descriptions continue. And then we come to verse 62. And besides these two, there are two other gardens. Then which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? Dark green in color from plentiful watering. Then which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? In them will be two springs pouring forth water. Then which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? So we see that these two gardens and the descriptions are given, and then two gardens again are mentioned. This does not necessarily mean there will be two gardens and four gardens. Some people understand this to be the different levels or degrees in Jannah that people will go depending on their deeds. So some people will be in one level or one garden and some in another garden. But explanation that I came across which seemed quite good is that um, it's not necessarily 2 gardens or 4 gardens or 8 gardens. There's no real number to the gardens, but it's saying that when we experience whatever we experience there, we will never become bored of what we come across. If something is on the earth and we've seen it and explored it and we go again, and then after a while it will become boring and we'll be tired of it. But in general, once we've explored everything, we'll never become tired of it because there'll be always something new and something new all the time, which is unlike this world where which is limited. Um, it should be remembered that the purpose of Islam is not to avoid hell or gain paradise, but that these are the punishment or reward for not striving or for striving. The purpose is to seek the glory of Allah or the countenance of Allah, to love Allah and to do one's duty to Allah as a Khalifa, to grow and develop and follow the straight way. And Allah is the goal. Okay, we can move on to verse 70. In them will be fair companions, good, beautiful. Then which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? Companions restrained as to their glances in goodly pavilions. Then which of the favors of your Lord will you deny? In verse 70 we see Hur is mentioned. One translation for us is modest, intelligent companions in blessed shades. Hur, this word is mostly been translated as gorgeous woman with big eyes. Hur also applies to, the word Hur applies to both men and women. The male gender is Ahwar and the female gender is Hora. The noun Hur, rendered as companions pure, is a plural of both Ahwar masculine and Hora feminine, either of which describes a person distinguished by Hawar, which means intense whiteness of the eyeballs and lustrous black of the iris. In a more general sense, Hawar signifies simply whiteness, or as a moral qualification, purity. Hence, the expression Hurin signifies approximately pure beings, or more specifically pure companions. We also know when the companions of Isa alayhi salam were mentioned in the Quran, the term Hawariyun were used. So Hur is of Hawariyun is not necessarily only female, but could be male. But in this context, it may seem to be referring to females. And one explanation for this means that it could be just generally the righteous woman in paradise and not necessarily special beings of Jannah alone. Verse 78, blessed be the name of your Lord, full of majesty, bounty and honor. So the surah began with the name of Allah Ar-Rahman, and the contents of the surah, the verses that followed, mention many of the bounties of Allah on us and His mercies that He has given us, the Quran and the things in nature that we see around us. And then He mentions, the surah closes off with descriptions of similitudes of what Jannah could be. So we should remember Allah's name and truly try to understand the bounties that He has given us, and so that we can serve Him correctly and understand His full majesty, or try to understand His full majesty and honor that He is deserving of. Okay, shukran.
Okay, so after that, call on for questions and comments. We then Surah Rahman.